All right, let's go to that escalation today, another one. In the standoff between the White House and the Ukrainian government, President Trump ordering an immediate freeze on all military aid to Ukraine. That also included weapons in transit. A spokesman from the White House said the president has been clear that he's focused on peace. We need our partners, said the spokesman, to be committed to that goal as well. Now, it's not hard to figure out which partner they're talking about here. Joining me now to discuss this, Director at Strategic Analysis Australia, Michael Shoebridge. Michael, I read that statement from the White House. I don't think anyone can accuse President Zelensky as being against peace. He's just against a deal with Putin to buy that peace. I think I'm with him. And it's that point about Putin where he's at loggerheads with Trump.
Well, exactly, Peter. Stopping military support to a partner who's in the middle of fighting a war, as Trump is doing, is a very bad idea. And you're right. Ukraine's President Zelensky wants peace, but he knows a peace deal that weakens Ukraine, rewards Russia and doesn't provide any security guarantees is not going to be a stable or real peace.
Or a peace deal where he's not even at the table. I mean, the idea that this gets negotiated and Ukraine, a legitimate democratic nation state, is not at the table dealing with their future when they've been fighting like no one expected them to fight for the last 3 years.
Well, exactly. He's a wartime leader of the strongest military in Europe, and pulling the rug out from under him to force him to accept a deal others negotiate, I think is all bad policy and all bad news.
All right, let's look at how it's been playing out in Australia today, because the PM was asked about Australia increasing our effort. Have a listen.
There's discussion at the moment about potential peacekeeping, and from my government's perspective, we're open to consideration of any proposals going forward.
We heard from Keir Starmer the other day, Michael, the UK would be willing to commit peacekeeping troops, but it had a line in there about being sort of backed in by the Americans. PM there not ruling it out. How do you read that?
Well, I read it as Mr Albanese doing more of what he's done about other things, like Darwin Port. Whenever he uses stuff like not ruling things in, not ruling things out, or having them under consideration, that generally means he's trying to vaccinate himself against making a decision. You know, Darwin Port, he's had 3 years of it being under consideration, and apparently it's back again. So I wouldn't be holding my breath about him having a decisive moment on Ukraine.
That's a very fair point, because, of course, he was against the Chinese lease of the Darwin port in opposition. He gets to government, he doesn't do anything about it, and he rolls over before he has his visit to China and says all the nice things that Chinese want him to say. Hey, the Abrams tanks, they're also in the mix here with Ukraine. Have a listen to what the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, had to say this morning.
Now, for operational reasons, won't go into the detail of that timeline.
Well, they were promised last October, so that was 5 months ago. Are they going to arrive in a timely fashion soon, or?
Well, they'll definitely arrive in a timely fashion, and they'll arrive in a time frame that we've agreed with Ukraine.
I mean, this bloke fills me with no confidence whatsoever.
These woolly words about appropriate time frame, and he can't tell us about the time frame for operational reasons. 5 months ago, they were meant to be being provided to Ukraine. Defence officials said at estimates last week, the first ones might appear in July to September, 9 months on. And in contrast, the UK government, when they announced in January 2023 they were giving 14 Challenger tanks to the Ukrainians, they delivered on that 2.5 months later. This will be a year on and still all words.
It doesn't fill me with confidence, again, that if we had to put our military to the sharp end of a spear in any meaningful way in Australia, you know, if China was bearing down our neck, if we were headed towards Taiwan or something like that, you don't have 9-10 months to get your act together.
Well, and you don't have international shipping lines that can move big, heavy items to stable ports. God forbid our military has to move tanks somewhere unpleasant.
Let's just go to China and the naval vessels, as we know, that have been on the east coast. They're now heading towards our west coast. In response, we've got US submarines, Australian submarines, and an air warfare destroyer spotted leaving HMAS Sterling. This is our base just south of Perth. Given we're a week on since this episode on the east coast, surely they could have got to water earlier than this.
Well, it looks like that Virgin Pilots news has travelled slowly across the country to the defence base at Sterling. This does look too little too late, and to me it feels a little bit like sweeping up after the Mardi Gras parade has finished. You know, as I drove up here in Canberra, I saw an Australian Navy helicopter flying around Canberra dangling a very large flag below it, and I wondered, was this part of the surveillance operation?
Oh, God help us, Michael. Just before we go, China's annual meeting of the National People's Congress and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Committee happening both this week. Major event, of course, for Xi. What should we be looking for here?
I think four things. We'll hear the Chinese Premier talking up China's economy, trying to paper over its disastrous news on consumption spending and its continued property and financial collapses. We'll see more of the purge of senior PLA military figures that Xi has underway. We'll hear about how wonderful the Chinese system of government is compared to the chaos in Washington. And we'll have Xi talking about how unreliable America is as a partner, a core Chinese propaganda line that events are letting him make hay with.
Aha. We will watch this closely. Michael Shoebridge, thank you.